Welcome to the A to Z of Talent with your hosts, Andrea Kirby and Zishuan Lin.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the A to Z of Talent. I'm one of your co-hosts, Andrea Kirby. And before we begin, and I hand over to Z, who's the expert today, I would like to say that you are all joining us from many different parts of the country, where in your workplaces and your homes. And for me, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, where I live and make my home. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. And to the traditional owners of wherever you are from, we pay our respects to them as well. So Z, today we're doing what? The letter J, job boards.
Letter J, job boards, and Josh. So it's really cool, actually. Josh and I met a long time ago, probably 12, 13 years ago, I think. I was hiring for a commercial analyst role. Josh was the successful candidate for it. And we've kind of kept in touch over the years since then. And Josh has kind of gone down some interesting different routes. So I thought we'd bring Josh on today and have a chat. So welcome, Josh. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. And I think you're being a little bit too kind. I don't know if to me or to yourself, but I feel like it's a little bit longer than 12, 13 years. I think it was 2005, 2006. So, I used to be an accountant, but my math's not that good, but I think it's a little bit longer than that.
Yeah. That's true. Hey, that's right. I totally forgot I met you back in agency before the other job.
Z,
we were both very
just passing you by.
We were both very fresh-faced. I think you might have been in your job, first job for like 6 months or something like that when we met. And I guess so much has happened for everybody since then.
Oh yeah, I was still a para back then. That's a word you don't really hear thrown around very much. Para consultant. Fun times, great times. So yeah, Josh, since then, back 2005, almost 20 years ago, what have you been up to?
Well, I've worked predominantly in the telco space. So I think when we met, I was working in professional services, but I sort of quickly got out of that space and went into telco. Worked for companies like Optus, which I think you had went to work there a little bit later on, but not at the same time. Worked at Vodafone, worked at Huawei Technologies, went around to all different angles of telco, and sort of working in various commercial finance roles. So my last real job, as I put it, was pretty much 4 years ago, almost to the day, working as a head of finance at Vodafone. And looking at corporate strategy and wholesale. And I kind of got to the end of my time there. So I was there for about 3 years. And I had this sort of burning desire to go and do something different. I just didn't want to go and get another job. I was kind of looking at the startup space. I was a little bit confused about, what's next for me. So I left with no real plan, took a couple of months off. And then joined an old boss of mine that actually hired me into Vodafone, started doing some consulting with him, still sort of in the same space, but, kind of life was pretty chilled. I wasn't working full days or every day. And then sort of working through with him for about 6 months, we decided to get into the startup space and build a recruitment tech startup, which was great and horrible all at the same time. So I ran that with him for about 18 months. Managed to get funding. So sort of like it was the full life cycle, just kind of like compressed down into 18 months. Got funding, hired people, fired people, shut business down at the beginning of 2021. And then I was like a confused little boy all over again. What I really enjoyed doing, though, from that experience was building products and sort of working in the startup space. I've wasn't ready then, and I'm not ready now to kind of tackle another startup. So I help people build sort of tech solutions for their startups. So I've got a no-code development agency, so sort of building web apps and mobile apps for people.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm gonna hit you up later because I need to build something also. So the job board. Oh, yep. Go, Andrea.
Oh no, I was going to say, so do I need to build something. So all of a sudden, I think we've got a business going here.
So is this a podcast or a sales call? I don't know.
Probably a bit of both. Um, so the job board you started was called NextMile. So how did you go? You and your old manager, you're both in the finance world. You were quite senior, head of finance at a pretty major telco. And what's the kind of you would have done a lot of hiring as well, being in that role. But where was that kind of leap to go from, hey, we're in this finance space, we're doing some consulting work, we get paid some pretty decent money. It's pretty kind of like, straightforward, don't have to work 5 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day. Um, why jump into the TA tech space? And was there a gap in the market that caught your attention? What inspired you there?
So I think it was really out of need. So we've got this new business, this little boutique company of two. We needed to hire people to work on projects with us. We're also needing to bring in business services as well. So sorry, there's my dog just shaking in the background. I don't know if you could hear that. Bringing in business services as well. So we needed to hire tax accountants, lawyers, all that sort of thing, those people to kind of come in and work with us. And it's just really, really hard. I mean, I think, both of you would know as well, like it's just hard to find good people. So we started off with this kind of very niche idea, which was really just around business services and solving that need. And because we're a little bit crazy, we just kind of kept expanding that out and kind of going, well, how's that different from the contingent workforce, bringing people to come and work on a project for a month or 3 months or 6 months, but then how is that process really that different from hiring people into a team like we used to do, people to work with us on a full-time basis. And I still believe that there is probably a product there at some point that can kind of manage all of those things, because people were shifting between those different groups as well. I, for one, had kind of, shifted through all of those groups of people at one point or another. But we kind of took on this big challenge and went from there. I've already sort of explained that things didn't work out. But I think we tried to take on too much too soon. But yeah, that was really the need, because I think for the entirety of my career, sort of drawing on that experience as well, hiring and being on the candidate side, the experience has not been great. It's only been getting worse. I mean, I've been out of the job market now for 4 years, but I don't think anything's improved. It's probably gone the other way, continuing to go the other way. Things taking longer, costing more money, more steps in the process, that sort of thing. So yeah, we were really trying to give that a big shake up.
I, as a TA professional and the member of a TA community, do almost have to challenge you on that. But I can see from a candidate perspective, and often from a hiring manager perspective, that it feels like things are taking longer, and in some respects they are. And we spend a lot of time doing candidate experience talking now, and certainly people are getting better at it. Sorry, and I'm going off topic here or off script a bit, Z, but when you were a hiring manager, what's interesting to me is the hiring manager experience dealing with a talent acquisition or a recruitment agency or anything. Did you ever understand what was going on behind the scenes? Or
yeah, so part of my job, actually for most of my career, I worked quite closely with senior management with when I was at Vodafone. I was the kind of finance business partner to the HR director, so I used to get involved in a lot of their process and expenditure around tools and these sorts of things. And maybe it was unique to that company, but I don't believe so. I mean, they had a very large loss on the balance sheet, so they were quite wary about spending money. So it was quite difficult for us to go out and work with recruiters to bring people in. It was kind of a last resort. So you've already sort of been through the ringer with Seek and LinkedIn and those sorts of things, and going through 300 resumes, and you finally get to the stage where you go, I just can't find anyone. I really needed them 3 months ago. Can I go out to a recruiter? And then kind of having restrictions around how that process works. So that was the kind of challenge that I saw, and that's what I faced every day. I would spend my weeknights and weekends looking through, for hiring for quite specialist roles. I was, receiving CVs from admin people and receptionists and those sorts of things. So it was quite frustrating. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, right? Because you would have to approach that from both sides of the equation. On one hand, you are the hiring manager, head of the department, trying to find some people which are hard to find. From what we hear in the market these days, it's even harder to find people than it was. But then on the other side, you're also responsible for helping the HR department keep their costs under control. So you can't really be, on the one hand, you're like, oh, I wish we could go to agency. And on the other hand, you're like, no, we can't, because I'm responsible to make sure they don't overspend their budget, right? So
right.
You're kind of like torn in both directions there. That's very interesting. And with your role, I mean, we're just going to continue down this tangent for a little bit. When it came to the team requesting spend, right? So the team at Vodafone wanted to invest in new technology or invest in training for the internal talent acquisition team there. How was that process? Did the head of TA come to you with an idea or a business case, or did you work with them? Which kind of approach worked for you guys at that time?
So they would typically, come with a new tool in hand and say, this is something that we want to buy. It's going to cost this much. It's going to save this much time. It's going to reduce this much, external agency spend, that sort of thing. So looking at, and I don't know whether they still use those products, but tools like HireVue, for video interviews and things like that. That was one of the business cases that I worked on when I was there. And obviously, you can make a business case work by putting something like HireVue in, because you're reducing the amount of people that you may bring in for interview, so that there's a lot of soft benefits that kind of spread across the organization by having a tool like that. Whether that delivers the best candidate experience, well, I'll let you be the judge of that.
Yeah, cool. Nice. And was that a fairly collaborative kind of discussion then? I was just listening to another podcast, right? And this is someone working in Citibank, and they said basically, their recommendation is take like a half developed, 3/4 developed type of business case across to your finance business partner, and then collaborate with them on finishing it off, as opposed to taking like a final, this is, the gold plated presentation and just presenting it off to them. Do you reckon that's like pretty good advice there?
Yeah, definitely. And typically don't take whatever the vendor gives you. Was most of the time you get these really inflated business cases. We're going to save you like millions of dollars. Just give us 20,000. And it's definitely not practical in a lot of cases. But yeah, I think really looking at tangible benefits, that's going to be the best approach to kind of getting something across the line. So is there spend that you can reduce? Is there headcount that you can reduce? I know that's a bit of a sensitive topic, but and those are the sorts of things that you would look to do.
I so that fascinates me around the tangible benefits over the soft benefits. Is that because you're a finance person? Is that part of the business case? Because certainly some of those soft benefits, particularly when you're looking at things like recruiter experience, hiring manager experience, which, we know that hiring managers get frustrated and recruiters can work with shit tech, which slows them down. And it's hard to quantify sometimes those savings in terms of time and efficiency. So you're saying that as a TA or an HR person, we have to come to you with the reduced headcount, which, see, I don't know if you remember when we were putting in our first applicant tracking systems, my business case to put in Taleo was the reduced headcount, which was an absolute furphy at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you need to have benefits from a few different sources. I think and it really depends on the organization. I mean, that was an organization that was looking to reduce spend as much as possible and improve profitability. So their kind of willingness to spend on things that would make people's lives easier was limited. We typically had most success with, we're going to save you some money. Maybe it's not going to be a lot of money, or maybe it's going to be a break even, or, there's going to be a small little residual cost. And then it gets across the line by some of the softer benefits, or, hey, we're just meaning that Josh doesn't need to work until 9 p.m. looking at CVs. It doesn't save any money, but makes him a little bit more efficient at his job. The business case in that company was never going to stack up just on that alone. But, kind of everything together can make sense and get approved that way. But I think in this climate, with where the economy is, I think it would be difficult to, unless there is a mandate from an organizational level, looking at improving the experience, I think you would struggle. That's just, the honest truth coming from a finance perspective.
You can take the man out of accounting, but you can't take accounting out of the man, right? Or
absolutely. 4 years on.
That's it. And I think it's kind of correct, right? The business cases they usually get through, and it's I almost say it's a bit of a lazy way to do up a business case, is to say we're going to cut X headcount, by introducing this tech. We all know from experience that it doesn't actually work that way. You think you can remove X headcount, but you end up adding back Y headcount because there's some other thing that needs people to do the stuff. But I agree, in the climate that we're heading into, I think there are a lot of nervous organizations out there, a lot of nervous CEOs and CFOs. They're going to try to be cutting back on spend as much as possible. So the cost reduction lens is definitely one I expect to be put over a lot of new initiatives and that kind of thing, which kind of like is a good segue back to your time starting up NextMile. So coming from a finance background, having done all these business cases before, you had all this, you mentioned to me last time you had done a lot of market research into the product. What was the business case like? I'm sure it in theory, it was going to make you a billionaire. And how did the research differ from, what you heard people saying they needed from market versus when you actually went to pitch the product? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so I think everybody that we spoke to in the early days while we were still developing the product were focused on the poor experience. They were focused on the time and the cost. And this may not necessarily have been true for, say, recruiters, but if we're looking at an alternative to a job board, and that was what was kind of driving us. And we sort of presenting this solution that, as a candidate, you can come onto the platform, you can kind of pull in your LinkedIn profile. It's got all of your, experience and whatnot. We were going to, asking people a bunch of supplementary questions to that to try to find this a little bit more of a rounded view on, what they liked, what they didn't like, how much money they were looking for, what was, the minimum that they'd accept. Did they want to work in a role where they're working 60, 80-hour weeks because they're at that point in their career where they want to grow quickly? Or, are they somebody that's just had started the family and they want a job where they can chill a little bit and they're going home at 5 o'clock? So trying to look at all of these other indicators, not just did they go to this university, do they have this number of years experience, and that sort of thing. So our process took about 10 minutes to kind of run through from a candidate perspective, and then we were coming back to them with jobs. And it may not necessarily be a job at the end of that process, but it's kind of when a job comes up that meets your criteria, a little bit like speaking with a recruitment consultant. You're going to have that coffee with them. They're going to call you when a job comes up that's suitable. On the flip side, from a company perspective, it was answering the reverse of those, right? So what are all of these things that you desire in your employees? What do you absolutely don't want? We'll make sure we filter those people out. So a lot of these kind of natural filters that come in when you first start talking to somebody, we're trying to remove that from the process altogether. What we actually found, though, and I'm not sure if this is because there has been a lot of activity in the space that just kind of hasn't worked out as intended, particularly from the candidate's view, was, well, I don't want you to filter all of the jobs. Our selling pitch was, you don't need to sit there and go through 200 jobs on Sunday afternoon when you're dreading Monday morning. But they also didn't trust us to give them the right jobs that met their criteria. And they kind of wanted to have that right of refusal and still go and apply for jobs that we know they're not going to be suitable for because the clients told us that. So that was one of the big challenges that we noticed between this sort of initial exploration to let's build the product, let's get people onto the platform. I used to deal with that on a daily basis.
Super interesting. Hey, so it's like on one hand, as a candidate, I don't want to apply for these jobs that I'm just going to get rejected for anyway. That's the initial kind of statement. And then when it comes to the crunch, actually, no, give me the options. I want to see what's out there. And maybe I do want to apply for Amazon, even though I know that, they are going to work me 12 hours a day, but I'm not in that right kind of life stage. I can't actually do it. Right. But I want to apply anyway. Right. Give me that
cool.
option.
Yeah.
But maybe that's something about and if we were doing it now, post-COVID, because this closed down, I think, in 21. But if we were doing it now, where flexible work, remote work, work-life balance, all of those lovely words and things is a lot more prevalent. I wonder if it would have changed now versus what was going on then when everyone was trying to keep jobs or look for jobs because everyone was losing jobs because of COVID. So
possibly, yeah. I mean, because we had worked with a organizational psychologist to kind of come up with a lot of questions, very easy questions that there was no right answer for, but it was really about trying to figure out what the things are that would fit, one person into a team. And, I, at that particular time, sort of launching in 2020, I think people just didn't care about it. It was, hey, I need a job. I've just lost one. I work for an airline. They're closed. Help. So, perhaps somebody can take that and run with it.
Yeah, sometimes it is like that, right? There are plenty of examples where ideas are just a little bit too early, right? And every time I see a QR code being used for recruitment now, which is way more common, I send it over to a mate who's now based in Canada because she had this idea maybe 7-8 years ago before people knew what QR codes was. And I'm like, oh, look at them. They're getting all this hype for this QR code idea, but you had this 10 years back, or 7 years back. And she's like, oh,
I distinctly recall, years ago, talking about running campaigns with QR codes and being laughed at. So
Yeah.
I think there's a cycle at the moment going on as we evolve work as such.
Yeah. So you probably just, I would probably say the idea sounds like it's still valid. There's plenty of organizations, companies out there trying to match kind of soft skills and team fit, team ad between candidates and jobs. But sometimes, it's just a little bit early. Hey, a little bit early. On the hiring
Guest
side, so on the
appearance on my
company
husband
side,
there. Sorry about that guest appearance.
no worries. On the hiring side, so from potential clients, what was the difference between your research and when you're going to pitch to them, say, hey, put your jobs onto NextMile? What did you find there?
So I mean, it's a marketplace. It's a chicken and egg, right? So you've got to have the candidates to get the jobs to get the candidates. I think there was a lot of people pitching a lot of different solutions at the time, and I think there was a little bit of pushback because another person that wants to come in and do something, particularly for those that had a kind of few failed implementations or had just invested time on different startups in the past. So what we typically found is that people would come to us and go, well, let me just give you the most difficult job, this super specialized role that like we just can't hire. We've been trying for 6 months. Take it and tell me what you can come back with. And that was difficult for us because we were still kind of building out the client side of the marketplace. So yeah, it was definitely either just sort of straight pushback. I don't want to spend any more time on this, or make a magic happen and pull a rabbit out of a hat for me, and then I'll let you get to the next stage. So I think we probably would have got there with more time, but yeah.
What an exciting, horrible bunch of TA people we are. Hey?
Yeah, you can feel this job, you can feel anything, right?
Yeah,
but
take
the worst one
have
possible.
been in it for such a long time. We've seen so many things come and go, and tech that we thought was the most amazing thing just fades away. And you were presenting yourself as a job board to a point. You were up against Seek. Indeed, we're getting stronger in the market. LinkedIn Jobs. Again, there could be some differences as those job boards are getting a lot of pushback now on pricing models and whether they're actually delivering. And certainly there's lots of people in my network that are moving away from some of those job boards, and we're going to feature some of that on a future podcast around how they've saved money not using them by using different ways of recruiting. So again, Josh, you might have just been a couple of years too early.
Possibly. Yeah.
So yeah, I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago. She's just started a marketplace also. And one of the challenges she said to me was, we're going to these companies, we're offering them to just, advertise on our platform. It's not going to cost them anything, but they still don't want to do it, right? And from her point of view, they've got nothing to lose. But at the same time, she's still finding it surprisingly harder than she expected to get these jobs on there. Do you think that is because of what you said before? So many previous attempts, so many previous startups in the past, and people just not wanting to kind of be bothered to take that chance?
Yeah, I think it's already such a labor intensive process. I think somebody coming along and saying, give me a go, can't promise you anything. I'm not surprised that they're getting a little bit of pushback. Maybe they need to think about, almost giving some incentives, to bring people on and work very closely with them to kind of show that it works. I think it can also help trying to look at the positioning as well. I think trying to position yourself as a job board, or trying to position yourself as an alternative to using a recruiter, can be tough because people are constantly trying to draw all of these parallels. So I don't know if there's a way for them to look at their positioning as well. That may help.
There's something about it being a service and adding, certainly from the internal TA perspective, and adding value. If you're being presented by another piece of tech that doesn't integrate with your ATS, there's a whole other manual process to get that person on board. So it's not saving time. Therefore, it's not particularly saving money if you're recruiting it yourself. It goes around and around and around.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? You need the integrations, you need money to get those integrations happening at the same time. The worst nightmare that I can hear is when I hear about a recruiter receiving CVs into their email, into the inbox, because that's like so many risks, so many problems in that situation. But yeah, I think that's good. I like that point about, maybe not trying to draw that parallel between being an agency or a job board. Alternatives, maybe finding a different message to go to market with, right? To differentiate yourself a little bit more. Andrew, you had a question about funding.
Yeah, well, I'm particularly interested in the funding side. I have a number of female friends who don't necessarily get the funding from the VCs because, female, we're a frightening bunch of folks. For you, how did you go about funding? Did you get any? What was your experience?
Yeah, so I feel like this is going to perhaps get interpreted the wrong way, being, a 30-something white male, but I knew somebody, so I was able to get some funding that way.
Yes,
but
I knew you.
that was literally my only hope of getting funding. So both myself and co-founder Cedric, going out and talking to all the traditional players, noticed that we're getting a lot of pushback just because of the vertical. They kind of went, I just don't want to do anything in that space, given that a lot of people have lost a lot of money, and I'm not sure that there's a lot of big success cases, right? So I think from an investor point of view, there may be better things to put their money into. We didn't get to the chance of talking to too many VCs. We were looking more at the angel round, like doing a round with angels. So I managed to get $500,000 of funding, at least on paper. I had a contract that said I was going to get that much money, sort of in mid 2020. But for a variety of reasons, and I think just poor choice of investor. I didn't have a lot of choices. I had to go with one person that was a little bit kind of all over the place, just in terms of life and investments and these sorts of things, and ultimately pulled funding at the end of the end of December, and sort of skipped out on some contractual obligations and ended up having to close the business as a result. There weren't any other opportunities for me to raise funding and keep the business going at that time, at least in the short window that I had. So I'm not surprised that, if you then throw the disadvantage, which I think it is, right, of a female founder trying to raise funding, I think it would be incredibly difficult. And I think my advice on that is start early. We definitely left it way too late, and our hand was kind of dealt for us. We had one choice, and that was that. I think trying to meet the right people at almost the inception of the business and build those relationships, because the cycle time between when you start those conversations to you've got money in the bank, I think is going to be a little bit longer than what you could expect in some other verticals. So that's probably something to just be mindful of. There is a lot of competition. There's a lot of people that are also conflicted out as well as a result, which I think comes back to the point around positioning. Because if you turn up to an angel and you say, hey, I've got this job board, but it's got some cool little tech that's kind of bolted onto it, but they've already invested in another job board, then you may struggle to get funding. However, if you're positioning it as something that's you're not trying to get lumped in with that, you may actually have more success, not only with the end clients, but also with investors.
Good. All right. Well,
That's really good tips. Really like that. Yeah.
I think, Z, are we ready to start? Are we ready to go to market with our new tech?
Yeah, definitely. I really like that. A couple of things that you wouldn't really think about, right? That time it takes between building relationships, getting that trust with the potential investors, through to actually the money hitting the bank, right? That's all. It sounds like if we think about B2B sales cycles being about 18 months or so, could be that long, could be longer even.
Yeah.
I always talk to people like Helena from Flow of Work and a number of other founders, Mike from Attract AI, and they're like, man, we just Mike doesn't have to do too much pitching, luckily, but Helena definitely is out there pitching a lot. So there's a lot of kissing frogs that needs to happen before you can get some investors to sign up. And the other one about some investors being locked out because they've already made investments in, quote unquote, competing tech, is something that probably a lot of us wouldn't have thought about. So I think they're really good sharings there, Josh. Thank you. Thanks for that. Now, very, very quickly, because we are almost at the end, Andrew and I get asked a lot about, TA tech and advising on product ideas. Sometimes these people are in the TA industry, sometimes they're not. That's actually why I was prompted to reach out to you to catch up in the first place, because 2 people within 2 weeks had come to me asking me about various TA tech. And, for somebody looking to get into this space, another thing you just mentioned, the vertical itself is not so attractive, so, if I could invest in a t-shirt, design drop shipping company versus a TA tech one, then maybe the t-shirt drop shipping company might be a better option, right? Who knows? But what kind of top tips would you give somebody looking to build something in the talent community or talent acquisition area?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity, but I think you need to have patience. So I've got a little bit of a list of good tips for you. I think the most important thing, and this is not specific to TA, but I think it's what's your personal connection to the product that you're building. Are you building something for other people that is not something that it's not solving a problem that you have or have had in the past? And I think that's what I see with a lot of startups in this space. It's like, oh, we can do this thing, wouldn't it be cool? Yes, you can, but actually it creates a whole bunch of flow on issues. So I think what's the personal connection? How is it solving the problem that you've got today, and will you be the first customer of your startup? So I think that's a very important general bit of advice. I think hiring processes have also, as I mentioned, just this is me just looking at statistics, have kind of blown out in terms of time and cost. So I don't think that there's any value in creating another step in that process, which is what everybody loves to do. I think it's important to look at how you can either consolidate some of those existing steps or remove them altogether with your product. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge and a bit of a litmus test, right? Lots of user research. I think I did a lot of user research, probably didn't do enough. So I think it's being really, really clear on, who are the people that are going to be using it, and how is this becoming a no-brainer for them, where they just kind of go, of course I'm going to use it. There's no way I wouldn't use it if this product existed. Going really niche, I think we had plans to go very broad. When we actually looked to onboard clients, onboard candidates, we did niche it down, but I think kind of go really, really small, because unless you've got a lot of funding, then it's really difficult to grow scale. So try and grow scale in this very small subset of jobs. Make sure you've got good coverage of candidates, good coverage of the jobs, and then you might have some success of making some matches there, and being able to expand out from there. And I know that's hard to do, because you kind of want to go, hey, I've built this great thing and I want everybody to use it, but it needs a little bit of discipline. And also, one thing, probably the last one, which is a big one for me, particularly that I'm now helping build products for other people, is actually start manual and automate things as they become an issue for you. I look at our own journey. We brought someone on, really, really great guy, to help build this matching algorithm for us. And, we bought some tech to kind of manage that. And you can already see there's all this complexity, right? What we probably could have gotten away with in the beginning is a spreadsheet with all of the answers from the questionnaires that we're asking people, and kind of manually matching people in the background, even perhaps hiring somebody to do that. And then once we were super clear on, well, this is kind of the algorithm that works the best, right? The weighting, this thing, we're going to weight it this much, this we're going to weight it that much. You get the idea, right? That makes it then super easy to then go and build an automated process from there. So don't try to solve everything. So you release this product and then go and lay on the beach for the rest of the summer.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's the way all tech works, of course.
Yeah.
I have to say, I've absolutely loved this conversation, and all the ideas I've had of TA tech and improving things, I've just put to one side again. I don't think I have time for it.
Yeah, I think it's good. That last point as well, just maybe do it manually first.
Yeah.
Is like, it's really striking. I've talked to another founder who's basically said the same thing. They've been pretty much doing things manually behind the scenes for like 6-7 years almost, and it's like now they're at the point where they're able to invest into the AI and the matching, and build that algorithm to remove that person in the loop type of situation. So it's, I think, a really good another gem, and there's so many gems in this conversation. I've loved it. You probably have to start up a new arm of your business, which is HR tech startup consultancy, because
I know
reckon
some people that they
reaching
could
out for you, definitely.
I can give some tough love for sure.
Well, I think it would be fair to say Z and I get approached to look at a lot of products. I did a demo this week for something, and I actually said, I think you're missing a trick. I think you're actually too niche for what you're looking to do. But and I actually did say, start niche and then build it out. So obviously I do know what I'm talking about sometimes. Who knew?
Yeah, but if Josh, you get a whole heap of people reaching out to you, definitely think about studying that as a sidearm of your consulting business. Could be quite lucrative.
Absolutely. I'm definitely happy to share. I feel like I can be quite critical, because obviously I've had a failed business under the belt. But I think there's somebody needs to come in and make some headway. If you're watching this, it could be you, but definitely learn from what others have done or not done so well in the past. Yeah.
It's a tough. Look, I'm sorry it failed. I'm sorry you put all that work into it and it didn't go quite how you planned. But my goodness, as I have learned in the last 5 years of running this business, the failures is what creates the next thing that you move on to. and that
Absolutely.
failure needs to be embraced as hard as it can be. Embracing it and learning from it is the thing that you have to do in this life.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be where I am today if not for that failed business. So there's some silver lining.
Terrific. Well,
I think
see,
there's a lot of silver lining.
Yes, we love a silver lining, but we are completely out of time.
We are.
In fact, we've gone well over what we planned, but for us, it's all about the conversation. So thank you very much, Josh. I've learned
Thanks for
so
having
much.
me.
I'm actually going to ring and have a conversation with you after this.
It's amazing. Thanks very much, Josh. It's been great to have you on, and we definitely will chat with you more later on.
Great. All right. Thanks very much. See you later.
See you later.